Good morning today. Good morning. Today is June the 26th. It is the last Monday of June. It is sad to see June go, but so long farewell. Today is the last Monday of June, the 26th.
I read the Zane idea.
I don't know where to even begin with that language. What was that? That Asgardian? What is that? Anyway, today is June the 26th. This is a freestyle episode, Pastor Eugene. And I don't mean like we're not rapping. That's not what I mean by freestyle. By freestyle, I'm talking about we're going to be talking about things very freely in style. Is what I mean by that. So I hope you'll catch on to that. We'll be talking about a bunch of different topics today. Fun ones.
Didn't you promise everyone a Roman Catholic episode?
Yeah, that's promise deferred. So we were going to do the Roman Catholic Church this Sunday, this week. However, some things have come up. Okay, I hope you understand. No, however, we'll actually be pushing that to next week. 2 weeks from now, actually, rather.
Who knows?
There's a lot of things going on.
Who knows?
So please, just your patience is necessary. Thank you so much. Right, Chunsuk?
Yes.
But anyway, all joking aside, because I was joking, we will be having a freestyle episode. Bunch of different topics this morning on the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. Gentlemen, today we have a freestyle episode. So let's start with some bars. All right, Chunzak, please go first. Come on, man.
I'm not a rapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the freestyle that we want today anyway.
Yeah.
Today, we are talking about what is the word? Grab bag? What is it? Like a mixed bag? Mixed bag of question.
Yes.
What is the word? Grab bag?
Melting pot.
So we have a melting pot of questions this morning. And before we kind of get to those, I wanted to quickly review and maybe follow up on what happened this past Wednesday. This past Wednesday, we had our very first ever WWE. Dun, 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 bum, ba, dun, bum. And during this WWE, we discussed Christian.
John Cena's thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christian and the economy.
Wait, what's WWE?
Worldwide.
No.
What is it again? Oh, you mean in our church?
Yeah.
It's Worship Wednesday in Education. And it's where we come together as a church and we wrestle some difficult topics.
I thought it was Wednesday worship and education.
What did I say? Worship on Wednesday?
I don't know. I wasn't listening.
You said Wednesday worship Wednesday and
Wednesday, yeah.
education.
Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday worship and education. It's very important that we,
Oh, I thought it was worship on Wednesday and educating. Is it not that?
Nah.
So it's Worship Wednesday.
No.
Wednesday worship and education. Right. So that's what it is. That's a tongue twister.
You can't mix the two.
No.
It's a completely different thing then.
Is it?
Yeah.
How so? So it's where we tackle some topics that maybe Pastor Eugene would not be discussing on Sunday. Not that you can't or anything like that, but it's just because we're, a Reformed church that subscribes to Lectua Continua. We continue with the text that we're on. And so sometimes these topics may not come up. So, for example, this past Wednesday, we talked about the Christian and the economy. And I heard it was a great time. I only say that because I was doing the children's ministry portion at that time. But there were some questions that came up. I know that you discussed that there were 12 points of stewardship that you discussed, the application of equity and compassion, and what that means, and the fact that the economy isn't just talking about money, it's actually a little bit deeper than that. And so you talked about all those different aspects of it. If you would like to listen to that, I believe our staff does have recordings of it that we can send, right?
Yes.
So email us at podcast@cjsnj.org or chunsokso@cjsnj.org, and then he will get you those files. Yeah. So
that's exactly how my Siri said it. Chunsok so.
So I guess one thing that we can talk about, maybe a follow-up question from that is during this talk, Pastor Eugene, you talked about uh, modeling our work week after God. So meaning you work 6 days and then you rest for one. And I know we kind of talked about this before as well in an earlier podcast, but our work week right now is 5 days of work and 2 days of rest.
Some people even have just 4-day work weeks.
We're in Europe?
No, in the United States.
In these states.
And I think people are actually pushing for that to become the norm.
I've heard that before too. Yeah. So it almost seems like we're kind of moving away from work more and more. Or at least that's just kind of the pattern. We want to get away from it more and more. What are your thoughts on this? How do we apply the 6 days of work, 1 day of rest to perhaps our society today? Should we be going into the office on Saturday?
No. Don't go in when you don't have to go in. That's not what I meant by that. Also, you have to also understand it in context. If you're a farmer, you couldn't take 2 days off. You just have to work when you have to work. And then when you would be like farming or a hunter-gatherer, it would be for God's people to understand that from all that work, you take that 1 day off. Now we are in a different place. After the Industrial Revolution, we have like 9-to-5 jobs. We not only work in factories, but now we work in offices. We sit for like 8 hours a day. So our work has become a lot more sedentary than what it was in the past. But what we mean by work is to produce, right?
Yeah.
And what we mean by rest is to rest from that production. And so, how do you rest well? And that's, all over our podcasts. You can listen to it. I believe it's called The Eternal Father's Day or something. Yeah, it's a very, very confusing title, but we mention it from time to time
it's
here.
Poetic.
Someone's on the defensive.
No, it's, yeah.
But yeah, you can listen to that one too. And it really is about, following what God has ordained and ordered in this world and how we ought to act and, mirror what God already set forth from the beginning of time.
So, I mean, so I guess a question that could come up is then how should we be spending on our Saturdays? Like what would consist of work?
Yeah, there's no simple answer to that one without me making this a really long answer. And because we want these to be short answers.
Freestyle. Yeah.
The Puritans had a really great, simple way of doing it. I think that's one of the really huge merits of Puritanism and also what they contributed to the Christian world. If you were a Puritan living today, I would imagine that on Sunday, you would just do zero work, meaning you would even put forth like recreation. You would solely devote it to the learning of God's word and to the worship of God and serving of God.
Yeah.
Like specifically, pointedly, right?
Yep.
And so you would imagine then if a Puritan lived here in this time, you wouldn't even look at your phone. For 24 hours, you wouldn't look at your phone. Maybe you would read a book. Maybe you would spend time with your family. But for the brunt of that day, you'd be sitting under the teaching of God's word, worshiping with the saints. You would, I suppose, ideally have a morning and evening service with Sunday schools in between, meals together with the church. You wouldn't go out shopping. You wouldn't go, doing errands for your family or for your house. You would reserve that whole time strictly for the service of God and becoming closer to Him. And so those are things that we can see. I think that was one of the huge merits of Puritanism is that you can see how easily they can kind of separate that. And I think they lived a great life. I think we kind of see some of that with Orthodox Jews, to be honest.
Yeah, on Saturdays?
Yeah, but they do it on Saturdays. But I don't know if they spend time worshiping with the saints. They're just more focused on like resting from the secular things, right?
Right.
But for us, it goes beyond that. You rest from the secular to devote yourself even more fully to what's holy, what is, sacramental in a sense. And so I would think that that should be something that we should set as a goal for not just us individually, but as a church. And even with the whole WWE thing, I've had people say, wow, Wednesday's great. I wish you could do this on a Sunday so I could just set Sunday apart. I think I really like that attitude.
Yeah.
An elder
Yeah.
said it to me too. I really appreciate that attitude. If we could take time, and New Jersey, New York, very, very busy. Everybody's busy. You have to schedule like dinners with your friends months in advance because there's always something happening. There's always a birthday party here or, like a kid event there or something to that effect, right? And so if we just took the time to discipline ourselves to set apart this one day, I think it would be of great benefit to us. And so that's what I think. We model 6 days of work, meaning we produce. We continue to produce. We continue to be fruitful. And on Sunday, that one day of rest that we have, we reflect on Jesus Christ. We, sit under the preaching and the teaching of the word, and we worship God with the saints and have fellowship. All that stuff, all that good stuff that we see in Acts 2.
Yeah. So I guess for me, a follow-up question would be then, in viewing Saturday, at least, I think the world kind of views it as, we live for the weekends. We work during the 5 days and we rest on Saturday. And
They're for the boys.
yeah, so we go out and hang out with the boys. We, go meet up with people. That view, is it wrong for people to view Saturday as a day of rest then?
No, I don't think so. I when you were talking, Ecclesiastes immediately came up to my mind, where for people's toil, they're gonna enjoy like a nice beer or something like that. And Proverbs 31, when the mother talks to King Lemuel, right? It's not for kings to do that though, that kind of thing. And so those images immediately pop up to mind. I'll just explain it real quick if you don't get it. There are things that we ought to do if you have a goal. If you don't have a goal and your goal is to live for the weekend, I guess that's the highest good that you could think that you could achieve. So why do you work 9 to 5 so that you can play on Saturday, Sunday? I do believe, however, for the Christian, it is different. Some in some ways slightly, in some other ways drastically. And that is, we don't live for the weekend. We live to worship God. And so, there's different stages of that kind of worship that we ought to do. And Sunday we set apart for exactly that. And yeah, and Saturdays, sure, you don't go into the office, but you still work. So I would say reserve all the chores and the errands you need to run on Saturdays then.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can find uses for Saturdays. Go on family trips on Saturdays. Do all the things that you need to do so that your family is still healthy in all these other ways on Saturdays. It's a very nice little time that we have because, let's say I'll go back again, putting it in context. Go back before the Industrial Revolution. We're looking at people couldn't work when the sun went down. You were forced to spend time with your family, whether you liked them or not. You couldn't go out into the fields and work. You know what I mean? And so from sunrise, you're up and you're working. And then when it got too hot, guess what? You went back inside. You had your siesta or your lunch or whatever it was that, depending on what climate you were in. And then up until sundown, you'd work again. And so different times, different contexts, I get it. But the principle doesn't change. The principle is that we work, we need to produce 6 days. And on 7th, we rest. And that's a great principle to have. I think a lot of people, even the group that you mentioned, when they live for the weekends, man, they're so tired. I don't think they're refreshed because they're so busy because this is what they're living for. So to them, it can kind of be a work in some senses. You know how there's that saying where people come back from vacation and like, how's the vacation? They're like, I need a vacation from my vacation.
Yep.
Because it was all work for them.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you have kids, it's not vacation anymore. And you hear all these cliches. And I think that to a degree is true because we're always working. We're never resting. And so resting is to rest in the Lord, to sit under his teaching. I think that's a beautiful thing that Christians have been given, and I don't think we should lose it anytime soon.
Speaking of, I guess, being a part of the agricultural world, um, if you were a farmer, what vegetable do you think you would plant? I'll probably do potatoes.
Oh, I was gonna say potatoes.
Dude, too slow.
Sweet potatoes.
What vegetable?
Yeah, like if you had to just do one, there's no such thing as crop rotation in this example.
Probably corn.
Oh, maize.
I don't know anybody who calls it maize.
Corn's a good one.
Yeah, because you could do everything with corn.
Cornmeal, cornbread.
You can make
corn chowder.
You get sugar from it.
Mexican corn.
Make tortillas.
Tortillas. Yep.
You can make tortillas from corn. How do you do that? Oh, it is from corn.
Yeah.
Oh, I take it back. I might be a corn farmer as well.
Nah, I'm gonna take potato.
You wouldn't do like
without one.
You wouldn't do like a wheat.
No,
Oh, yeah, rice farmer is nice.
Rice farming is not bad.
it seems very tedious though. You have to like peel all the grains.
Isn't it all fairly tedious though?
We have no idea what we're talking about. We don't know what it entails. Farming. People garden, but like I said on Wednesday, gardening and farming are not the same. Yeah, just because you have a nice little garden does not mean you're a good farmer.
Yeah, I assume potatoes you just pull out of the ground
Yeah.
and wash them.
Yeah, maybe. But thank you for that. Yeah,
Probably
corn.
offended a lot of farmers just now.
If you're a farmer and you're listening to this podcast, you're a great person. I wanted to, we're talking about work and this is based on a conversation that I had recently with somebody. And it was in regards to male death and retirement. And this was a very interesting topic to me, and I wanted your take on it, especially understanding that work is not just a physical thing, but it's also a spiritual thing. It's a command that God has given us as men and women who are to work the ground. I mean, not literally, obviously, but work is a biblical thing. So this individual that I was speaking to, we were talking about how husbands oftentimes will pass away earlier than their wives. And she said the reason is because after men stop working, after men retire, they age and they die. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. And you actually see this a lot in public figures, especially. Once they retire, they age very, very quickly. And I was just kind of curious what your thoughts were on that. Is there any kind of spiritual correlation that we see there with retirement? And also because many people in the working force today can't wait till they retire. That's what they're saving up for. That's what they're looking forward to. Waking up Monday morning is awful, but guess what? One day I'll be retired and I'll be waking up in Florida playing golf.
Yeah, I think this is a topic we'll probably cover on Wednesday too, but absolutely. Because men were made to work, period. And men were made to do actual physical work, labor. I think that's what men were made to do. So if that's part of your purpose, if that's part of your design and you stop doing it, it's no wonder that the body would age quicker. You would lose energy because you've had energy to do the stuff that, God had designed you to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it comes to me as no surprise if that is the case. And I don't think I've ever mentioned it, but yeah, I am not a proponent of the way the secular world looks at retirement. I don't think there's anything wrong with retiring from your job or career.
Right.
But if you're talking about retirement, meaning I'm going to stop working, then I think you're dead as a man. I think even if you were to retire from your job, you should still work. So for you specifically, let's say you're a pastor. Yeah. Let's say you're a pastor and you retire.
Yeah.
You can't stop learning. You can't stop reading the Bible.
Right.
You got to keep on reading the books, and you still have to teach all the way to your last breath because that's your vocation. That's your calling.
Right.
And so I think so imagine you retire and you just stop everything. Oh my goodness. Like that would be a terrible trauma.
Yeah.
You would like be putting on your soul and your body. And so, yeah, I am not a big proponent of the way the world looks at retirement, where like now I can finally see the world. It's like, for what? What purpose? If your job was to teach, are you going to teach anybody after that?
Mm.
Is it just solely for self edification? Because even if it's for rest, you rest so that you could go back to work, right? You don't
Yeah.
rest to rest. And so if you're not going to go back to work, what's this rest for? And so those are things that I keep in mind too. There are other people that don't like it. Like, I think John Piper is more adamant on his, you know, and his criticisms on the way we see retirement now.
Seashells.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain the seashell thing?
So I think he was talking about, again, like you were saying, this whole culture of retirement that we have, and how God would view our work on this earth. You know, let's just say we work for 60 years, then we retire and we go to Florida and we have a seashell collection, versus someone that lives until 80, but they work for the kingdom till their dying breath. When they get up to heaven, what do you have to say for yourself? God, look at my seashell collection, you know? And so I think he said this at a youth retreat, I think a while ago, but that really stuck with me as well, because it challenges this entire retirement culture that we have. But yeah.
No, I especially like the parable that Jesus gave with the rich man and the barns or the silos. And so, you know, he's like, wow, I really had a good harvest. I could just tear down my old barns, build up new ones, and then I can just be merry, just relax. And then God said, you fool, I'm going to take your life away today. And so, if the purpose was to work, then you continue to work. If it's to rest and play and to not edify anybody but yourself, then you really did lose your purpose. So even in, let's say, your family dynamic, the man of the household, or, you know, the husband, the father, it's not an old cliche thing to say. It's not just a traditionalist thing to say. There's a reason why the word provider is connected with the word father. And so even theologically speaking, you know, when we call God Father, it's connected with Jehovah Jireh. And we should remember that God is the one that provides as well. And so we mirror that as well in our families, if you are the husband or the father.
Yeah, I just think this topic of men retiring and then not working, and just that being detrimental to their health is something that's really interesting. It's almost as if our physiological design was also made to work. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think when men work, sweat, and it's to produce, there's great gratification. And even when let's say you sit in an office job and you're producing, the fact that you don't sweat, I think maybe drives a lot of men to go to the gym, because testosterone is there for a reason.
Yeah.
Testosterone is not just there to do nothing for you. And so I think there are all these things that are playing out now in modern society, and, you know, that we have no idea why we're doing it. But I guess to the ancient man, it would have been a no-brainer, you know?
Right.
Yeah, let's go out to the field and work. You say, yeah, I gotta make my, you know, my shekel or whatever it is, and to feed my family. And let's go. Denarius.
Do you think then, understanding that there is a physiological or physical component to work, do you think that perhaps more physical labor driven work is more honorable in a sense?
I think it's a less jump in connection. Now we're going to the area of philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's less jumps to make that connection between the mind, body, and work. Whereas if you're sitting down just crunching numbers, it's harder to make that jump in connection. There's many more jumps you need to make.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on the person. And this is my opinion. I think it depends on the person. Just like if you're a teacher, you're not there to do push-ups or something. You're there to study and exercise the mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, have everybody else develop their minds. But again, mind you, this is a more recent phenomenon where everybody needs to be college educated to even do the simplest and the most menial tasks in our society, which is kind of foolish, isn't it? So I did kind of make fun at one point, but so many people gave me a response after that comment. I was a little bit taken aback, which was you got your 4-year college degree so that you can sit behind a desk and work on spreadsheets. And then a lot of people did make a comment on that because they're like, yeah, that's true. So I was like, why'd you get the 4-year degree so that you have to work behind a desk on spreadsheets, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think at our heart, at the foundational level of who we are, we do want to produce, we do want to create, we do want to innovate, we want to support industry. And, you know, going back to that economics teaching, that is one of the ways that God has designed us to glorify Him.
You know, I do think it's interesting that today's culture that's driven by pop culture and just kind of the celebrity culture, the most popular, the most famous, the most emulated people and their work, their production is just entertainment. They're not producing anything. And I find that to be really interesting. Because, you know, we just talked about even like, I was reminded because we were talking about how people go to the gym because maybe there is something connected with sweat and toil. But think about even bodybuilders, they build their body not to work, but their work is to build their body.
I think you know that firsthand, right? With the whole drum cage experience that you've had. Can you tell us about that? I think we call it functionality.
Yeah. So what I've noticed is that bodybuilders have no functional strength. They don't. So I remember a couple years back when I was really into bodybuilding that we have a drum cage that's it's at least 200 pounds. At least 250.
It's just a plexiglass, yeah.
But it's not just. It's
very heavy.
Yeah, it's super heavy. And then I had a difficult time carrying it. And one of our elders, who is very skinny man.
He's maybe went to the gym twice in his life or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Uh-huh.
He picked it up like it was nothing and then laughed at me. And I was so confused. I was like, how is this doable? But it's just because there's no functionality in bodybuilding.
I mean, there's a lot of aesthetics to bodybuilding, but
yeah,
I think that's one of the things where we're seeing. Now, this is, I suppose this might be a slight tangent in what we were talking about. If you look at how societies are built, there are different spheres of industry. When we didn't get into that because that's more of an economics thing.
Yeah.
But all the way on the bottom, meaning the last thing to get developed, while also being the last thing to go, meaning when a society is destroyed, is the arts and entertainment. And so you have all this innovation, you build all this capital, and when a society is rich and it's developed well and it starts to thrive, you see the arts and entertainment, sphere start to really boom. You know, think about it. If we're at a world war and it's taking up 90% of our resources, we're not going to go watch a baseball game.
No,
you're not going to go play baseball. That's not the thing on your mind, right? You're out there fighting wars. You're out there on the field, like trying to kill the enemy. That's not what you're trying to do. And so when you see a society where it's going very heavily into entertainment, you could tell that perhaps the innovation is starting to die down and industry is starting to die down. And we're more about flooding this one place where it's the last thing to die. So this is in a depreciating society, decadent society. You'll see this happen where, people will hold on to the art because it is the last thing to go. And I think for me, I noticed that, and since you brought it up, I'm talking about it. I've noticed that from the 2000s, for me, I'm sure people may have noticed it earlier if they would say but from the 2000s, I've noticed that more and more people wanted to stop producing. There's this one instance when I was teaching kids, one of the questionnaires that they had was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was different in the 80s and 90s. People used to answer the question by saying like doctors or firefighters or astronauts. They're all innovators, by the way. And now all these fifth graders, what they were writing was CEO. And like, CEO of what? You're not producing anything. You just want to be chief executive officer of something. So it's the position. And then now I don't think people want to be CEOs. They just want to be an influencer.
Mm.
So you see this gradual shift happen with our young people in what they even desire to become. What is their ambition? What's the goal that they have in their lives? It used to be a classic answer, especially for Asians, would have been like a doctor or a lawyer, right? But what kid says, I want to grow up to be a doctor? And why do you want to become a doctor? And if you ask a lot of these kids, it'll be maybe, hopefully not all.
Mm.
You know, I would suspect that it is because they get paid. You know, I want to make that money. And then what if, you know, having an OnlyFans makes you more money than a doctor? Why would you be a doctor? You know, why don't you just do OnlyFans forever? And now we see all these young women come out on their social medias regretting their time on OnlyFans, but it's never going to go away. And what did OnlyFans say? The reason why I think this is such an epidemic is because, what did they say? They had like 3 million content creators on their site.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Our young people are flooding this market because they don't know what industry is. They don't know what innovation is. They could only think of entertainment.
Isn't OnlyFans like a pornographic site?
So they first marketed themselves as that and other things. Like if you wanted like private personal content that you wanted to subscribe to. So let's say I'm a fan of Sam's trumpet playing and you want content. I think Patreon tried to capitalize on that kind of market as well. Okay. I don't know if you know what Patreon is, but
isn't that like a Venmo?
No. So pretty much content creators will have a Patreon only content that they will
so there's
put out.
free stuff that you put out, right?
I see.
You know how people used to make money on YouTube?
Yeah.
Well, you can make more money if you have a subscription, if you have a subscription base, right? And so OnlyFans marketed themselves like that plus other things. But now the huge market on OnlyFans is obviously pornographic material.
Yeah.
Which is very unfortunate. You have all these young girls on this that are going to ruin their lives or that have already ruined their lives, and they're coming out on social media with a lot of regret. Maybe perhaps just lamenting for themselves. And they don't know how else to convey it except through social media. But maybe also as a warning to other people that might want to follow in their footsteps.
Mm. Thank you for that. I want to just, along the same vein, you know, we talked about CEOs and I guess role models for this era of kids. There was a post that came out recently of Mark Zuckerberg fighting Elon Musk, and they are both MMA aficionados, and I believe Dana White of the USC may be setting something up for a charity. It's a charity fight. I guess question number 1, would you tune in? Question number 2, how much would you pay to tune in? And question number 3, is fighting for sport a sin?
Yeah, let's go to number 3 first. Is fighting for sport a sin?
Because the reason why I asked this, right, is because I actually had a friend in seminary that wrote a paper on this on Christian ethics. And the whole premise of MMA for entertainment value is to maim the other person. Obviously not kill the other person, but to harm the other person, to punch the other person in the face, wherever, kick them. And I believe his point, just kind of summed up, was you are attacking another image bearer for sport. And
yeah, I think that's a decent position for a seminary student to take.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily take that position.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could definitely, you know, argue for that position. However, I probably would take a different angle on that. The Olympic Games, as far as we can remember, has always had this one sport, which has been dying down recently, but maybe it'll pick back up. It's called wrestling.
Wrestling.
Yeah. The whole point of that isn't just to maim the other person. I don't think maiming is the purpose of MMA either. It's to have the other person submit. Either you knock them out, that's an automatic submission, right? Or you actually, you know, get the breath out of them. That's also a submission.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there's terminology here like submission holds and things like that. But that's not what I mean by submission. It means you lose the fight.
Mhm.
And so you want to see who is the greater and more superior fighter. And a lot of it had to do with, you know, maybe with the games, people can be entertained without the war. So there is this kind of animal instinct, this very base instinct that we have to watch something that is somewhat violent and gory. So I get that part. That part is definitely there. So I'm not trying to say MMA is all good, all bad.
Yeah.
I think the point I want to really make is it's probably adiaphora to a degree where football, I don't think is a good or bad either. But there's a lot of violence in football. But the goal behind football is to get that, you know, pigskin across into the end zone, right?
Right.
And so with that, there are rules, there are referees, there's, you know, skill, there's, you know, strategies. There are all these plays that you make, and there are positions that you play. And it's very reminiscent of not just war games. Like if you think about anything, a lot of it has to do with a little bit of war games, like chess.
Right.
Like you have pawns, but you also have rooks, bishops. You have, you know, knights. You have all these. They're fighters, right?
Yeah.
And so even on a chessboard, you're fighting. So are you going to go all the way there, saying your point in playing chess is to fight and defeat the other person, which is inherently a violent act? Is that what you would argue? I wouldn't necessarily argue like that. So if I were to give pushback on that kind of thought, I would probably give pushback and try to lean more towards the adiaphora, which means more like neutral. It doesn't really mean neutral. It just means it's not good or bad until we put in more context, right?
Okay.
So you can be an MMA fighter and you might have a mindset of, I just want to knock people's teeth in. That's a bad thing. I don't think I would, you know, not, you know, stop anyone calling that sinful. But it could be because you're skilled at this, and, you know, having other people submit is going to make you a better protector. I don't know, a better soldier, you know, a better defender of the country. All these things, they're awesome things, you know, because, you know, they do that in army training too. You know,
Right.
I once had someone I knew who was so good at sparring and wrestling that instead of getting deployed, what they did was they sent him around all the, you know, all the bases in the United States for him to spar other people because he was so talented. And then that would make the other soldiers better. It would sharpen the other soldiers' skill and things like that. And so I would say that in response, as a short answer to your third question, I forget exactly how the first two questions were worded, but I will just say Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg would be a fight that I would pay to see, probably more than any other fight, because it's just two nerds going at it. I think it would be hilarious. And I think there's a level of like nerd strength that I can kind of see, especially in Zuckerberg. He has like this nerd strength. I don't know how to explain it.
He has that look. He has the nerd psycho look.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, I learned this. It's like the nerd lifters. So there's this theory out there that nerds make the best bodybuilders because what they'll do is if someone teaches them a formula, they'll just do it as the formula dictates.
Right.
That
They
makes
won't
sense?
innovate or change it, or
they won't do anything to go away from that. So if it's a working formula, they'll take it. And see all these nerds that have like great bodies because they just did that. So I see Mark Zuckerberg in that kind of light. I could be wrong. I mean, but he really does look like a nerd. Like he's wide-eyed. He's very innocent when it comes to the world. I don't think he could go into a store and know what, you know, a gallon of milk would cost. But I think when someone teaches him, he would learn it, and he would, you know, be able to execute it exactly like he's been taught. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think Elon, though, he's kind of beefy right now. I feel like I say Elon knocks him out.
But he kind of just looks like a finance bro.
But I think Elon's got this thickness strength. I feel like he knocks him out.
I think Elon already has an advantage because of weight and height.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does he have? 4 inches on Zuckerberg, and he must have at least like 20 to 40 pounds on him.
If Zuckerberg can get him to the ground and be in a favorable position to use his jiu-jitsu, then I think he would submit him. But I think Elon, his ground game is going to be better and his striking is going to be better. I think.
He kind of reminds you of like Bruce Wayne in
like
real
Batman.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. He does have that kind of
What
vibe.
if he's secretly been training? Yeah.
I think so. I think Elon takes it. Yeah, I think Elon takes it. I don't know.
I'm not going to call it. I have no idea. But I did call it on other things. If I have more information, maybe. Just like the whole aliens and demons thing. I did call it, brother.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Yeah, you sent me a who was the interviewee?
It's someone from the government who was one of the top heads in
Like
this,
classified.
Yeah, in this UAP department, yeah. And well, you could tell what the interview
So
said.
in the video, he says he discovered, or I guess his department maybe discovered something, and he brought it up to a superior of his, and then the superior pretty much told him, "Hey, have you read the Bible?" And he said yes, and then he said, "Well, demons exist, and we're going to leave it at that," or something to that extent, right?
Yeah, he told him to get out of the field because it's not healthy. It's like, why? It's like, have you read your Bible? We already know what these things are. That's what he said when he was talking about UAPs and aliens.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, demons, man. And when I saw that interview, I was like, boom, bullseye.
There's a sliver of, not, I don't want to say hope, but
you're hoping that
you want there to be like good aliens.
No, I don't want there to be good aliens. I'm just saying, like, if the Guardians of the Galaxy was real, there's good ones out there. As guardians.
It's
Anyway.
extra biblical.
It is extra biblical. I wanted to talk about 2 current events that I want to just kind of get your take on. The 2 biggest ones that we've been seeing on the news cycle as of late is the happening with Hunter Biden and also the tragic accident of the Titanic submarine vessel. I wanted to just kind of get your take on those 2, and if you kind of maybe summarize for us and maybe help us to see this as a Christian should.
What happened to Hunter Biden?
To be honest, I don't know.
You don't. Maybe Tansuki knows.
He did a lot of bad stuff. Like, he had was it unlicensed firearm?
No. He lied on his application. Yeah. To get to register for
And
a
he had a lot of
firearm,
tax stuff too, right?
Yeah, he didn't pay taxes on like $1 million, something like that, and he was caught. And it was fraud, and there's all this other stuff that's coming out. It's so many things. I don't know if I could keep up these days. What did he exempted his purchases for prostitutes from his taxes. So if he paid for prostitutes, he deducted it from his taxes. And so all these things are coming out. There's so many. And, it's significant, not just because he's the president's son. It's because we know that they shared bank accounts. His money is tied with the president. And I guess right now there are ongoing investigations within the House of Representatives on some whistleblowers that have come out, and even someone that said or claims to be the person that was in the middle of those transactions of him giving the $10 million in bribes to the Bidens. And so all this stuff is coming out. For me, I think the world, or the vast majority of people that I talk to, take 1 or 2 stances on it. And that is, this person is so corrupt, they need to go to jail right now without any trial, without any further evidence. And there's another side who's like, oh, this is a nothing burger, don't worry about it. Very similar to when the laptop of Hunter Biden came out. It's the president's son. Don't say anything about the son, But dude, maybe if he was 5, but this is a grown man who has financial ties to his father. Not just him, it was 9 other Biden family members.
Right.
They have like between them, they have apparently like 20 shell corporations. Why do you have shell corporations? Why do you have 20 of them? Those are all red flags. And so when people read this and this is all coming out into public light, it is troubling, especially because if he did get bribed and the president did get bribed by foreign nationals, foreign officials, it does compromise our security and integrity. It compromises a lot of our, national defense too. It's very, very dangerous stuff. And so I think that's why it's pretty significant. We're still looking at what's going to come out. So we'll see. I think for the Christian, like you asked, we are always called to pray for those that are in authority over us. And so we should pray for the president. Pray that, because look, in the end, even if you don't like him, if he gets cut down, then our whole country is a mess. That's the point. And you're like, well, the country's already a mess. No, it's going to get worse. So you pray for the president. Or you pray like Martin Luther, where he starts to pray for kings. And one of his prayers that we went over even in our church is, let the king be repentant. And if he doesn't repent, let him be deposed quickly.
Yeah.
And that's very biblical in my opinion, because when the king is evil, all the people suffer. And then when, an evil king is deposed, then all the people rejoice. But then someone else needs to take that mantle. Otherwise, someone even worse might come in. So pray for a God-fearing person to come and take the executive office. That's what I would pray for. And yeah, I do think being a Christian is very important nowadays for you to take any kind of office, because what's the alternative? Someone that doesn't even know what authority is, someone that doesn't understand government and economics in an ethical view, it's just a power play for them. That's how secularists see it. Government office is just a power play. The reason why I can do all this is because I have power. So yeah, sure, the nominal average guy will go to jail over like a fraction of what Hunter Biden did, but Hunter Biden's not a normal average guy.
Yeah.
He's above the law.
Yeah.
And that's how people are starting to see this story. I think that's why they're upset. So for us, when we see this, I don't think we should, get up in arms or even depressed. I think we should see it for what it is. It's a call for us to pray and pray for repentance. And then if the president doesn't repent, I think it's okay to ask that God depose him quickly. Otherwise, this person will act as an instrument of judgment upon the nation, because we keep on electing and supporting these very corrupt, morally deficient, bankrupt officials.
We had discussed earlier today, I guess just off mic, if you will, how there are some conspiracy theories out there. The Titanic submarine vessel that we have been hearing about on the news for the past week, actually the Navy was aware that it had imploded, or that something had happened actually on Sunday.
But they have a very, very high-tech sonar detection system.
Yeah.
And they already knew on Sunday that there was an explosion or implosion in that area.
By Sunday, we mean Sunday the 18th, so Father's Day of June.
At least that's what we're reading, yeah.
Right. And some conspiracy theorists would say that the reason why the Coast Guard was sent out and this was all over our newsfeed was to maybe cast a shadow, hide, minimize the Hunter Biden news story that's happening right now. But yeah, it's kind of it's sad how those two are connected. But this submarine vessel, that where there were 5, I believe, inside the vessel, they were going to they were going to explore the Titanic wreckage that was off the coast of, I believe, Massachusetts and Nova Scotia, I believe. And we found out that the submarine vessel imploded, that all 5 have been deceased or are dead.
They're considered, yeah.
They're considered dead. So this is a tragedy. I think every loss of life is a tragedy, but I also think at the same time, there are people that are quick to make jokes about it because, again, these are rich people that decided to do this on their own. They weren't forced to do it. They paid $250,000 a pop to do this. And so I think people may not care as much. But I guess that's my question too, is how do we think and pray through something like this, where this is an event that happened out of their own volition, right? They volunteered to do this. They paid money to do this. And an accident was definitely something that could have happened, and it did happen. How do we react to this? Is this a tragedy for us? Should we be praying for their families? How should we be handling this as Christians?
Probably only because it has garnered so much media attention that if it has your attention, then I think prayer would be a good response. Okay. Yeah. I remember I talked about this with my cousin, and then, he doesn't live around here, but then I was telling him like, oh yeah, I know that you're interested in this, but to be honest, I think watching paint dry is more exciting for me. And this is what I said. And then he sent me a link of video of paint drying. And then I sent him a link of grass growing, a stream of grass growing. And so those are things that we kind of joke around with. But to be honest, two things can be true at once. I don't think they're mutually exclusive in regard to your conspiracy question. So they could be true or they might not be true, but they don't necessarily have to be correlated. So both don't have to be true at the same time for it to exist, and both don't have to be false for, their premise to, be denied. So it could be that the government knew about it on Sunday and they just didn't tell anybody, and we don't know why. And it could be the government knew on Sunday and they didn't tell anybody because they wanted to suppress the Hunter Biden story, because he apparently made a plea deal of getting no jail time for all his crimes. And so both could be true. I mean, both could be possible scenarios, while the Sunday event of the U.S. Navy knowing that, the submersible had imploded, that kind of thing. So not necessarily, a conspiracy. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy. I mean, they could have known. We just don't know why they didn't say it. It seems to me, though, it's a little callous for them to not say anything. And then us spending so many resources over the last, 4 days, post Sunday, of, trying to search and rescue this ship, because people were so worried. There were all these news stories about how many hours of oxygen would have been theoretically left in the submersible and things like that. And because it's only, you could only open it from the outside, you couldn't open it from the inside.
Right.
Even if they had floated to the surface, all these theories started to come out. And all these resources were wasted. So that is a little concerning for me. But again, I don't know. To be honest, I don't spend too much time thinking about it.
But couldn't it also have been like a no stone left unturned type of situation where they heard it, but because the search only stopped after they found the debris, right? So
I think I could be wrong. I thought they found a little bit of the debris before. But, if the U.S. Navy detected a sonar explosion/implosion, some kind of sonar event, you would point the resources to that
that's
event.
where it was. Yeah.
But they didn't. They kept it a secret. So that's troublesome.
Yeah.
But it didn't help anybody after getting that knowledge. Again, I haven't really been on top of the story, so that's as far as I know. So that's where I find certain facts to be troubling or troublesome. If that's the case, if it is the worst case scenario, we already, then, we're in trouble. How corrupt can officials be to try to do what people are, speculating?
Right.
It is. That's why I think it is a conspiracy. We don't have any evidence to prove it otherwise. I wouldn't necessarily put all my money on that.
Thank you for that, Pastor Gene. And we actually do have a Q&A that was sent in recently. I really enjoyed this one.
We need a beat.
What you got in the bag? What you got in the bag?
Human nature is made up of the body, which is physical and passes away before being glorified, and the soul, which is eternal, unseen, and provides the spark of life. Did Christ, on his time on earth, being fully human, have a soul? If so, was it his human soul that communed with his divine nature? So, did Christ have a soul? This question intrigued me because, I mean, first of all, we know that God is spirit. The God the Father and God the Spirit, we know that are spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We know that God the Son is fully man
Mm-hmm.
and fully God.
Mm-hmm.
Being fully man, we would say that he has a soul because he is fully man.
Well, let me just preface it by saying some of it is a mystery where we have names for it, but it is still a mystery, like the hypostatic union.
Yeah.
It is a mystery, but I think we need to start with a premise, though. Otherwise, you're again in heretical territory.
Yeah.
That Jesus is fully human.
Right.
So in every way, a human is a human. Jesus is human. So humans have souls. Jesus has a soul. That's how I'll probably easily say that. He wasn't just a shell of a body. And if you said he was just a shell of a body and it was God's spirit inside him, you would be in heretical grounds. So I hope that clears that one up. And so in what way did his human self commune with his divine self? Again, that's the hypostatic union talking.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. If I knew, I'd be Jesus. So I don't know, but yeah, he has a human nature. He is fully human as far as we are concerned. And I think that's what we ought to also remember. Yeah.
So, I mean, this kind of brings to question again. And I think a part of this question has to do with maybe trying to picture what that hypostatic union looks like in human terms. I think that's where maybe this question may be coming from. But we believe that the word became flesh, right?
Mhm.
We read that in John 1. And so my question is, what is, I don't want to say Christ's state, but who is he before his condescension? Like, was he spirit before his condescension? Because, or was he did he have human flesh as he was in heaven prior to the condescension? Like, how do we think about this? Prior to Christ's condescension, where was he? Yeah.
Yes. I think, again, you're confusing. Well, the danger will be to confuse the human nature and the divine nature. They are separate. They are joined in Jesus Christ, but the natures are separate. And I think we need to understand that. So another heresy is if you mix the two. So it's not human, it's not divine, it's huvine or something like that. It's
Humanly divine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's some kind of mixture. That's not what we believe. And that's another heresy that people have gotten kicked out of the church for.
Yeah.
So in every way, God is God, Jesus is God. In every way, man is man, Jesus is man.
Yes.
And so that's what we're talking about there. And so it's a good question. I just want to remind you again, when we talk about Jesus Christ, the hypostatic union, that's what we're talking about. Human bodies has a birth, so Jesus has a birth. Did the body exist before his birth? No, obviously not. But did Jesus exist before? Yes. But how could Jesus have existed if he wasn't human?
Exactly.
The Son existed. That's who Jesus is. Okay. The plan existed. And also, I think one person did point this out, which I really enjoy. God always existed.
Mm-hmm.
He's outside of time.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we refer to God, we always put him in time. But the condescension of God is more than just entering the physical reality. When you enter the physical reality, you are entering time. So God entered time as a finite being as well in Jesus Christ to experience human life. Okay. And that is probably one of the mysterions that angels are looking into. I think so. And not just a plan, but how could God do this? How can someone infinite go into a finite being? How is this possible? Again, I think it has a lot to do with, our Lapsarian theology, but I think it also has a lot to do with God's aforementioned plan in Genesis 3:15. He already aforementioned, meaning he prophesied that a savior will be born of woman. If he prophesied outside of time, it's already like it happened. Does that make sense too? But
Yeah.
we can only speak in terms of time.
Right.
So when we say it's like it already happened, we don't know any other way to describe it because we are in time. So when you're in time, you can't really describe things outside of time.
Yep.
So we have these words and languages to try to describe it. And so when he prophesied in Genesis 3:15, it's like it already happened in a sense, right? But not really, because time exists and he had to be put into time. So I like to view things as it has happened and it will happen, that kind of thing. They're both true at the same time when God speaks. And so those are things that, some concepts that we see is like salvation. It has happened and you are going to also be saved. Because are you saved? The answer is what? Sam, if you believe in Jesus Christ, are you saved?
Absolutely.
Let's say it's your ordination exam, right? If you believe in Jesus Christ, are you saved?
Absolutely.
If you believe in Jesus Christ, will you be saved?
Yes, absolutely.
How can both be true? But they are both true.
Mhm.
If you believe in Jesus Christ, you are saved. Past tense.
Yes.
You have been saved.
Yes.
And if you believe in Jesus Christ, you will be saved. That's also true. So how can both be true? They just are. And from those concepts, we know of justification, sanctification, and glorification come into play. Where you have been saved, justification, you are being saved, like it says in the Bible. It means sanctification, and you will be saved, meaning glorification. All those three things are true when you believe in Jesus Christ. Okay, and so I take it we learn a lot about our theology when we accept the premises that were given in the Word of God. Now, when we try to understand all the foundational aspects of the premises is where people get tripped up, and we just don't understand. I get that. Absolutely. I don't know a lot of stuff, but we do know what we do know, and it is for our benefit. God gave it to us in His Word.
So just the follow-up question from me is, in Acts chapter 1, we see Jesus ascend bodily. And in Revelation, we see John's vision that Jesus will come back bodily. So
Yeah.
does that mean Jesus is at the right hand of the Father currently in a bodily way?
I mean, I believe so. It's not like he shed it like some kind of costume. That'd be weird. Imagine.
Yeah.
Like he takes it off like a jacket. Like, psych, I got to put it back on. No. But I think he is the first fruits of the resurrection for a purpose. He is the one and true Adam. And God actually encompasses everything that we need as humans. And he fulfills the covenant that we saw that he made with Abraham in Genesis 15, right? The fire, what is it? The fire stone and the torch, the fire pot and the torch going down the carcasses in Genesis 15. So he fulfills that promise all himself. What a great and awesome, mighty, mysterious God he is. And like I mentioned on Wednesday too, a lot of those mysteries have been revealed to us, but not all. Does that make sense? Yeah. Paul calls himself a steward of the mysteries of God when he talks about the gospel. Those things have been revealed to us in Jesus Christ. Before even the author of Hebrews talks about how these are a foreshadowing, a shadow of things to come. Now we actually see the substance. And so, yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to recognize that Jesus is our high priest. He is as he was and he will be, as he is, as he was taken from us when he ascended into heaven. I don't think he's going to change. And I think that resurrected body also signifies that eternalness the physical body was supposed to experience before the fall of Adam. The eternality, right? Yeah. And then Sam talked about the tree of life in our devotion today. All fascinating stuff.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions that I have, I think, regarding Genesis as well. But we will save that for another time. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Next week is a TBD, isn't it? Isn't it? There's some stuff in the works, and we'll see what drops next week, but something will drop.
Maybe more freestyle. People
Maybe,
like it.
this
Maybe
is
more rap.
no, less rap.
Not a rapper.
I feel like you could. Tune in next week to find out. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.